Hello, friends, and welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper, the show where we break down spirituality, healing, and personal growth in a way that is practical, relatable, and real, so that you can actually apply these lessons to your life. My name is Avery, and this is episode 12, where we are talking about life lessons and soul contracts, how to discover what you came here to master, how to discover what lessons your soul set out to learn in this lifetime. I love this topic. I really feel like this is one of those things where when you really dive into your life lessons, what you have learned, what you are learning, what you feel like your purpose is, this will change your entire life. And so whether you have thought a lot about this already or whether you haven't thought about this at all, I promise this is a life-changing topic. And even if you have not thought about this in necessarily a very direct way, you know, if you look back at your life, do you ever feel like there are certain challenges in your life that keep repeating? Do you see a lot of patterns that you feel like more than other people, you seem to see a certain pattern in your life over and over again? You see underlying themes over and over again, or maybe not just in your life, but generationally, you feel like there is a certain theme that your family or, you know, your parents and your grandparents or whoever just seems to deal with this pattern over and over. These are all things that point to your overall life lessons and soul contracts. And so we're going to get into this. But it's important to note that this episode does sort of hinge on the fact that I personally am coming into discussing this topic from a certain belief. I personally believe that I believe in reincarnation. I believe that our souls choose specific life lessons before incarnating onto Earth, that we choose to come here and learn certain things, and that we have a certain overarching purpose that we want to accomplish here on Earth. Now, do you have to share that belief in order to benefit from this episode or from these topics? No, absolutely not. But I'm just letting you know where I'm coming from when I am discussing this and kind of the language that I will use. I don't think that you have to even believe in life lessons to learn your life lessons. You cannot believe in any of this and think it's all just a bunch of BS. And you can still learn the life lessons that your soul set out to learn. You can still fulfill the purpose that your soul came here to fulfill. However, I believe that knowing about it and being aware of the life lessons and really thinking about them in a more direct way does make the process much easier, much faster, and kind of get you on a fast track of, you know, learning those things and really moving through life in a way that feels very aligned and that feels very abundant and like you're really on the right track. So at some point, I would actually love to have on a past life regressionist and really discuss this whole topic of incarnation and soul contracts, because I think it's such a fascinating topic. And I have met with a past life regressionist before, and it was such a fascinating experience. And I just love this topic in general. But for today, this is what we're going to focus on. Another thing to kind of preface this topic with is that for a lot of people, including myself, a lot of people approach our lives with the belief that Earth is essentially a quote unquote school planet. It is a very dense lesson learning planet. Like if you incarnate here, you are coming in with the intention that this is going to be a boot camp of sorts. It's rough here. This is not an easy experience. You come to Earth with a very unique set of things that you want to learn. It's a very karmic experience. It's a very dense experience. And there is a lot of dummies on board this ship, okay? There's a lot of people who I believe, you know, come to Earth and they're just flailing through the experience. They're not necessarily, you know, they're definitely learning, but they are not making it a smooth experience, and they are making it hell on a lot of other people around them. And that is just part of being here, right? So just know that if you are listening to this episode and you are somebody who is trying to approach your life from a very open to learning, open to understanding better, like your purpose and your lessons, you are already so far ahead of the curve. You are so far ahead of people just by being someone who is open to learning and growing as a person, because it is hard work and it requires a lot of self-awareness to better yourself, to change habits, to learn difficult lessons. And so congrats, honestly, just for being here. Because the way that we learn lessons as humans is we're very stubborn. We are basically, because of the way that our society works, we come here understanding that the only way for us to truly learn the lessons that we need to learn is through difficult emotional experiences. Because let's be honest, if we all had a really easy, cushy life where nothing ever went wrong and everything was great all the time, there would never be any prompt to change. Why would we want to change anything? Everything is great. Why would we reflect? Why would we do anything? We would just keep it the way it was. The way that we learn lessons is through difficult experiences. And let me tell you, 2025 is a hell ride for most people. So I think this is a very timely episode. The best people that I've ever met are people who have been through something hard. They've got insane stories. They've been through hell and back, but they chose to evolve in a very positive way from what they went through. There's people that go through hard things and then they consider themselves to be a victim and they do no growing, they do no evolving, and they really just blame everybody else for all of their problems. Or there's people who go through hard things and they choose to do inner work on themselves. They choose to grow. They choose to evolve. Those are good people, and you will recognize those people when you meet them and when you come across them. They're very strong. They're very self-assured. They didn't let their trauma consume them. They didn't let it handicap them. They didn't consider themselves a forever victim. Instead, they chose self-awareness and growth and evolving, and they became healthier, happier, much better versions of themselves. And that's really the goal with this podcast, right? Is we are people who want to evolve, who want to become better versions of ourselves, who want to do the work, and that's why we're here. So, with the understanding that, you came to earth with a set of life lessons. Those lessons happen through experiences. They happen very often through other people and our relationships. They could happen through, illness or all sorts of different various life circumstances. But it's very common for people to have a recurring theme that plays throughout your life. And that theme is going to really be a light shining on the lessons that you may have come here to learn. It doesn't mean that you only have lessons in one category, but it likely means that that's a big chunk of the lessons that you are supposed to be focusing on in this lifetime. So for me, something that has shown up consistent, I've had a lot of consistencies, but something that is a very easy pattern to reflect on in my life is financial struggles. In the youngest part of my childhood, my mom was a single mom. We really, really struggled financially. Our living situation was much less than ideal. And I learned at a very young age to adapt very much a scarcity mindset. And we were evicted from our home and, we never had enough to make ends meet, or so I understood as a child, and even then when in my later adolescence, when I lived with my dad and we were more stable financially, there was still a lot of mouths to feed and, we were on a budget, and it was just very much a conversation that was always, revolving around, there's not enough, or we need to cut back, or we need to do this. And I had already adapted that so much from a young age that just became a continuation of what I learned in life. And that continued on in my adulthood all the way up until now. And I discussed this, I think, in another podcast talking about astrology and how you can kind of look at your birth chart to get a better understanding of some of those same life patterns or lessons. And for me, I can now recognize that the second half of my life will actually bring me much easily a lot more abundance than the first half of my life. And the first half of my life, it was really learning, being faced with all of these obstacles. And the second half of my life is about overcoming them. And so, but for me, that financial struggle, that's a pattern. That's a pattern that showed up a lot in my life. And one of my lessons is learning a lot of lessons around finances, but especially to let go of the scarcity mindset and, how that works, and not leaning on other people and really taking things into my own hands and being self-sufficient. Lessons around self-worth and how that plays into finances, and lessons around trusting the universe and just trusting that there's good things in store for me. And there's so many different little lessons that you can go down and learn from these sort of circumstances. But that's just an example of a way that you might be able to look back over your life. Maybe it's like a certain type of toxic relationship that's a pattern for you, or maybe it's a way that you're treated, or maybe it's certain jobs, whatever it is, think about what that might be trying to teach you. Because usually challenges are teachers, right? So any sort of like really difficult experience in our lives, those hard experiences often hold the biggest lessons. So think about the hardest things that you have endured in your life. Again, whether it's a pattern or whether it's one singular, just really difficult event, maybe a childhood trauma, again, maybe a messy relationship, maybe an injury, a chronic illness. Your worst moments are often your biggest teachers. Another thing to look at is your emotional triggers. So a trigger on a deeper level is essentially your body, your emotional system, basically trying to clue you into a problem that you need to look at. So your emotional trigger is your body going, hey, we have an issue here that we need to deal with internally. Whatever is triggering you is a reflection of something that is going on inside of you. And a lot of times, yes, we're triggered, quote unquote, by other people. However, the lesson there is not to expect another person to not trigger you. The lesson is to look inside of yourself and think, why am I being triggered? What is showing up right here that I need to deal with? Or what belief needs to shift so that I am no longer triggered by this thing? Is the trigger a certain type of person, a particular person, a trait that continues to show up in people that surround you? Is it something work or career related? Are you super triggered by money, by body image issues, by friendships? Whatever it is, look at the trigger and think, what is this telling me that I need to shift in order to not be bothered? We need to be unbothered, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean that we're allowing other people to walk all over us. It means that despite what happens in our external circumstances, that we have the ability to hold our ground, to stay grounded, to stay unbothered within our own emotions, despite what's happening on the outside. Another kind of light that will shine on your lessons is, again, your birth chart. This is so eye-opening. A really good thing that you can do if you don't understand astrology very well, which I don't understand astrology all that well. I've bought a few books to try to understand it better. I've done a little bit of research, but I'm certainly not an astrologer, don't know all the ins and outs, although I'm learning because I think it's fascinating and really insightful. Another thing that you can do, though, is you can look up, and I can leave a link to the show notes if you have not done this already, but you can just plug in your birth date, your birthplace, your birth time if you have it. If you don't have it, you can still benefit from this. It just gives you more specifics like your rising sign and things like that. But you can plug your birth chart into a free birth chart calculator essentially, and it will give you kind of this map with all of your placements. What I like to do then is take those placements and plug them into ChatGPT, at which point you can ask all sorts of questions like, based on my birth chart, how does this affect my career? What sort of life lessons does this say that I will likely need to learn in this lifetime? What does this say about my relationships? What does it say are my strengths versus my weaknesses? I mean, anything you could think of, you can ask ChatGPT to basically help you kind of break down your chart. Specifically, if we're talking about life lessons, some helpful places to look, and again, an astrologer could tell you much better than I can, but just off the bat, some places you could look are your Saturn placements, which is going to tell you kind of like where you're going to need, where it's required, where you're going to need to put in some effort, possibly more so than other people. You might have to put in some work, right? Saturn really wants you to work hard and learn things. But then once you learn them, you can be rewarded from those lessons. So for me, I have Saturn placements in the second house. Like I really, again, finances, I'm going to have to really work on learning life lessons around finances. But once I learn those lessons, I will be rewarded and I can live in the abundant reward from learning those lessons. So it's not a forever curse. It's just telling you where you are going to need to kind of put some elbow grease in. Another placement is your seventh house placements, or kind of like your relationships, your North Node, which highlights kind of overall life purpose, possibly career path. 10th house also deals with career path and kind of like what you might be known for. Again, so those are all things that you could, again, plug into ChatGPT or just Google or look up if you really want to get a better idea of kind of what your energies in those certain areas are. So that's a little bit of a cheat sheet, and I think you will find that you won't be surprised. Like I bet if you do this, you may find that it probably aligns a lot with certain difficult circumstances that you've experienced thus far and will help you explain things that you've already possibly been through. Another thing to look at in terms of life lessons and what the universe might be prompting you to work on is the type of people that you attract. What do your relationships look like? Whether it's a romantic relationship, friendships, your relationships with family, both good relationships and difficult relationships. Every relationship that you have will mirror lessons to you in some way. We are all constantly reflecting energy back and forth from each other, every person to every other person. And so again, it kind of goes back to those triggers. Like, you are constantly reflecting energy back and forth between you and other people. What is the energy reflecting back to you? Is it triggering you and pointing to something that needs to be healed inside of you? Or do other people bring out the best in you? Kind of think about who these different people are, what people bring out the best in you, what people bring out the worst in you, and the people that bring out the worst, what is it reflecting in you that you need to change? It doesn't mean that you have to keep these people in your life forever, but everybody on some level is a teacher in your life. You are a teacher to other people. You probably trigger other people in some way, and other people are a teacher for you. So everyone, for better, for worse, is reflecting to you in some way something that you can learn, whether it's inspiring you because they're a really great person and you're learning from them, or whether they're triggering you and you're like, you know what, I really don't want to be around you, but thank you for helping me learn this lesson because I'm better off for it. You know what I mean? But also just considering if there's a pattern that shows up, like you always are attracting people that do this one thing to you. You're always attracting people that belittle you, or you're always attracting people that are not people that you can lean on. You're always attracting people who are maybe emotionally shallow or emotionally not as intelligent as you are. And so that's showing you that maybe it's showing you how to set certain boundaries, or maybe it's showing you how to trust yourself and your own intuition and how to show up for yourself. Again, that's very nuanced. It could be a lot of different things, but just again, looking at patterns. Once you can figure out what the patterns are, maybe what the lessons are that you're supposed to learn, when you work through those lessons and you do the hard stuff and you self-reflect and you self-assess and you do the work of trying to evolve and better yourself as a person, the universe will always reward you for that work. It's kind of like we all come in at level 1, and the more lessons that we learn, universe moves you up to the next level, then moves you up to the next level. So it's like, again, the more lessons that I really truly learn around my financial perspective, the more the universe can move me up to the next level. The more you learn about your romantic relationships and your self-worth and your boundaries, the more you stand up for yourself and you no longer accept the bare minimum, the more the universe will bump you to the next level. Okay, so those are all ways to kind of figure out what sort of life lessons you might be needing to work through, where the universe is trying to point your attention in terms of things you may need to work on. Now I want to talk a little bit about kind of understanding the purpose behind your struggles, which is similar but different. Basically meaning it's really important that when you are going through this hard stuff, it's important not to get bitter and resentful. Basically, it's important to keep in mind that all of the hard, traumatic, difficult seasons of your life have a purpose, and you would not be going through them if you, again, my personal belief, you do not have to share this belief. My personal belief is that you signed up for this. And I know that's sometimes really hard to believe, even for me, because I do think there's some horrible, horrific, truly evil things that happen to people. And it's really difficult to think there's no way that I would ever, or anyone would ever sign up for that or be okay with that. And you know what? I don't have all the answers or understand all the intricacies of how that might work. But in general, I do know that good and evil both are always teaching us things. And more than anything, we come here to learn. And we see these lives that we're living as like a big play. So I truly believe our soul really doesn't take our lives as seriously as we do, because our soul knows this is not permanent. This is not our last stop. This is a learning experience. This is a boot camp that we're in. It's not the end all be all. So I think it's important to note that challenges are not punishments. Your challenges are your growth opportunities. And this is really triggering for a lot of people. And it's something that a lot of people do find very difficult. It is difficult. And a lot of people do get trapped in that victim mentality when bad things happen. And it doesn't mean that you were never a victim of somebody else. You could absolutely be a victim. But the important thing is to not stay in the victim mindset, because staying in a victim mindset is essentially giving away all of your power to somebody else. If you feel victimized by someone, you have given away your sovereignty. You have given away your self, your sense of self, your self-worth, and you are letting somebody else hold power over that. So just because you were wronged doesn't mean that you need to stay in a victim mindset. Again, it goes back to the difference between people who evolve and they let their challenges turn into lessons and they become better versions of themselves, and the people who become consumed by things that they went through and they lack self-awareness and they don't want to do the work. They don't want to look at the hard stuff. And so they don't evolve. They just get really angry and really bitter and really resentful, and they end up being a worse version of themselves. So the most important part is to not avoid the hard parts. Do not let yourself remain in a victim mindset, but see your challenges as lessons. Don't run away from feeling uncomfortable. The growth is in the discomfort. The more you stare it in the face and ask hard questions, the more you will grow. Feeling the contrast between where you are and where you want to be, or what you're learning, feeling through the pain, letting yourself experience the emotions, process them, that is you sitting in class as a soul. Like, that is you doing the work. And it's very abstract. Again, that's why I do this podcast, because some of these things feel so abstract and like these weird concepts that are really hard to grasp, because we just talk about, learning lessons. But the point is, what does that actually look like? And so I'm trying to connect the dots for you of when you process emotions, when you consider these challenges that you've been through and you choose to look at them from a space of, how can I become a better person because of this thing? That is your soul learning lessons and doing the work. Okay, so again, because this can be sort of abstract, I am going to go through a list of basically a giant list of examples of maybe some repeating patterns that show up in your life, and then what the lessons that maybe you're supposed to learn from those things are. So listen and just see which one of these pop up for you as like, oh yeah, that's definitely something that pops up in my life. Here's the lessons that, again, doesn't mean that these are absolutely your lessons, but it's just to get your wheels turning. These could be some of the lessons that the universe is encouraging you to learn, right? So if you've experienced repeated heartbreak or toxic relationships, even if it's just one, but especially repeated, a life lesson could be learning self-love, learning discernment, learning how to break unhealthy cycles. That's really common generationally as well. Do you really struggle with boundaries or people pleasing? So you might be supposed to learn, why is that hard to say? Self-empowerment, self-respect, and the ability to say no without guilt. Do you experience constant rejection? Maybe you're supposed to learn self-worth and resilience. Are you constantly faced with fear of failure? You need to learn self-trust, self-confidence. Are you feeling unrecognized or overlooked? You need to learn to validate yourself rather than depending on external validation. And honestly, I could look at every single one of these and say, yep, those are lessons I'm supposed to learn. So you may be every single one of these. Do you have constant financial struggles? Learning self-trust, resourcefulness, and how to heal scarcity mindsets. Are you feeling stuck in life? Learning patience, surrender, and the power of taking initiative, or just trust in the universe. Have you lost somebody that you love early in life? You might be learning acceptance or the impertinence of life and deep emotional strength. Are you attracting controlling or manipulative people? You might be learning self-sovereignty, personal power, and when to walk away. Do you feel really disconnected from your purpose? You might be learning to trust your intuition or experiment with different paths, releasing external expectations. Have you experienced betrayal? You might be learning forgiveness without enabling. Again, none of these things mean that you're accepting behavior from other people, accepting bad behavior. This is all internal work, okay? Learning forgiveness, trusting yourself over having blind faith in others, discernment, learning emotional independence. Are you a people pleaser? learning how to prioritize your own needs and stop seeking love through overgiving to others? Do you feel like an outsider? You feel misunderstood? You might be learning authenticity, self-acceptance, and the strength to stand out. Do you struggle with procrastination or lack of motivation? You might be needing to learn discipline, self-trust, or how to take action despite fear. Are you experiencing intense anxiety or control issues? You may be learning how to surrender, how to flow with life, how to trust divine timing, trust the universe. Do you have a difficult time speaking up for yourself? You might be learning self-expression, confidence, and the power of your voice. Are you struggling with comparison or jealousy? You might be learning gratitude, self-appreciation, self-worth, self-love, and that your path is unique and to honor that. And lastly, do you feel like you always have to be strong for others? You might be learning vulnerability, and it's okay to receive support. Or it could be the complete opposite of that. Do you feel like you can't trust others or others are not showing up for you? You might be learning self-worth or trusting yourself, trusting your own intuition and your own strength. So that felt really wordy, but I just want to really get your wheels turning in terms of where is the universe really trying to point my attention in terms of life lessons. Okay, another thing I really just want to touch on really quickly is clues about your life lessons and your overall purpose, which we've really been focusing on lessons so far and not life purpose, but we're going to get into that more with this topic of gifts because these life lessons and soul purpose very much overlap. Now, when I say soul purpose, it doesn't mean that you have one purpose and nothing else matters. It just means there might kind of be an underlying theme. A lot of times your purpose deals with how you are helping others in the most impactful way. So you're going to learn all sorts of life lessons throughout your lifetime, but there also might be a kind of an undercurrent of your entire life, or maybe the second half of your life, where you really step into a role of, you help others heal, or you really step into a role of where you are a teacher in some way. A lot of times we think of this in terms of like a career path. It often is. It does not have to be. Like you could literally be a telemarketer, but your overall purpose in life is to help people through your relationships in a certain way. You know what I mean? So it can be career related just because a lot of people, when that purpose comes in, it's something usually that you feel a lot of passion around, you feel very committed to, you feel like, this is a gift of mine and I can help people in this way. That usually ties to your purpose. And a lot of people do take that on a career path so that they can focus on that a lot or bring in money from that. And it's very aligned because it's purposeful. It doesn't have to be though. And so I do want to make that distinction. So your strengths and your natural talents are also part of your purpose. So thinking about what comes easily to you. And really, I know so many of us are conditioned to feel like an imposter or feel like we're not allowed to honor things that we're good at. You are allowed to honor things that you're good at and be unafraid to step into that. I know that I am good at speaking, communicating, talking. I really enjoy helping people process things. That is why this podcast exists. This is actually the third podcast that I've ever hosted, but it was always kind of like the right idea, the wrong time. And now I truly feel like I'm stepping into the right idea, right time. Like this is finally a much more aligned where things are starting to, the path is starting to be laid out for me. But it also took me a long time to just feel like it's okay to say that I feel like I'm good at those things and that is part of my purpose. We've been conditioned, especially women, to feel like I'm not allowed to be confident about this or that. And I'm here to tell you, you should absolutely be, nobody knows what you're good at and what your strengths are as much as you do. Okay? Other people can help you say, you're really good at this or you're really great at that, or have you ever considered this? But really, you know better than anyone what feels aligned, what you feel passionate about. That will help you point to your purpose. Again, going back to your birth chart as well, your north node, your 10th house, both of those placements will really kind of help you tune into the energy of your overall purpose. In my birth chart, it specifically talks about several topics. One, communication. Two, topics like spirituality and these deeper taboo topics. Also, I have some Aquarius placements, like my North Node is in Aquarius, so it's very much tied to helping the collective and kind of stepping into, it's combining all of these energies that point to something like this podcast. So your birth chart can really clue you into kind of what might feel really fulfilling and aligned for you if you don't already know kind of what that might be. Because when you align with your natural gifts, your natural talents, things that you're passionate about, that often is something that you planned ahead of time, that you came here to do. Those energies are aligned because they are part of the plan. So when you align to that path, you'll find that many doors will automatically start opening for you. And that's the universe's way of telling you that you're on track. It doesn't mean that there won't be any road bumps, but it will not feel like a constant uphill battle, or you won't feel constantly unhappy and unfulfilled doing something that is a part of your purpose. It will feel like you're passionate about it. It will feel like, you have all of these creative ideas, and, it doesn't mean you'll always feel motivated either, but it will definitely be something that you don't tire of, that you feel really passionate about. And a lot of times also your life lessons will be things that really assist you in this overarching purpose. So it's like a unique combination of the life lessons, the challenges that have shaped you, and your gifts and your talents. And together, those things kind of put together this puzzle of what your personal mission is, your personal overarching goal, which again often is something that somehow helps the collective or helps other people, because your soul on a soul level is not selfish. It is never selfish. Our souls come here with the intent of learning our lessons and also helping people learn their lessons. So it's very much, we're all connected. We are all part of God. We're all deeply intertwined on a soul level. So anytime your soul planned a purpose, it's going to overlap with helping other people somehow. Now, you might be thinking, hell no, I'm introverted as all get out. I don't want to deal with other people. It doesn't mean that you have to constantly be interacting directly with other people. You could be an artist and your art really speaks to people and it helps heal people on a soul level, or really, it can be an indirect way of helping people. But at the end of the day, it's your overall mission is almost always going to be something that is beneficial to the collective. So you could be a healer or a medical professional who healed yourself and now you teach other people how to do the same. You could write a book that helps people overcome some sort of obstacle in their life. But whatever it is, again, it's going to help people in some way. So again, this is something that would also be really helpful just to journal about, to kind of write down and kind of process, like just to get it down on paper. What are my life lessons? Like what is the universe pointing me towards? What do I feel like my gifts and talents are? Sometimes writing it out all on paper and kind of seeing everything in one place can help you kind of zero in on where the overlap is, if that makes sense. You could also just meditate, like go into a meditation. It could be a guided meditation or just a normal meditation where you are seeking to kind of tap into your inner knowing of what your soul desired to come here and learn and to come here and do. And again, things like a past life regressionist, they can absolutely help you with some of those questions, or a psychic or a tarot reader, or, some sort of practitioner. Again, they are living out their purpose by helping others figure out their own purposes and their own life lessons and their own experiences and processing those things. So those people are definitely great tools to utilize if you can to help you get some of those questions answered. So the goal really, if we're going to focus on a kind of a takeaway, is being able to focus in on getting a better understanding of your repetitive life lessons, patterns showing up in your life, and what they're pointing you towards. And then once you have a better understanding of whether your purpose or your lessons or whatever you're supposed to be focusing on or doing, working on embodying those things, working on actually doing the inner work of evolving and changing through processing emotions, through working on your triggers, through setting boundaries for yourself, or whatever, all those things that we talked about, working on actually doing those things, practicing those things. It is not a quick overnight thing. It's certainly a process, but you are supported. You have spirit guides behind you. You have your higher self behind you. You have God or whatever helps you to feel the most supported. The universe has your back. You're always supported. And again, doing this work is how you move on to the next levels of your life, especially if you feel like you're noticing repeating patterns. If you don't want to repeat those patterns anymore, the best way to get out of that cycle is to learn the lesson so you can move on to the next level and move on to the better, higher paths in your life. It's not always linear. It's just like anything else we've talked about. It's a roller coaster. We go up, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or no, is it the other way around? 1 step forward, 2 steps, whatever it is. It's a process and it's messy and it's chaotic, but it's worth it. And it is very rewarding. And it only takes little small shifts in behavior, small shifts in mindset over time to really and truly evolve into a totally different version of yourself. Okay, so I hope this podcast was helpful. Maybe another time I can go into more detail of some of my personal examples if that is helpful, but I don't want to ramble on all day. So thank you so much for being here. If you would leave a review for the podcast, it would mean so much to me. It really makes an impact. Please take a second and leave a review if you can. I will be forever grateful. Also, if you have any questions or if you have any requests, whether for a topic or a certain guest, you can always email me at daremetoprosper@gmail.com. I would love to talk to you that way, and I will see you next time on Dare Me to Prosper.